Imagine a people whose story begins over 3,000 years ago, a people who have survived slavery, exile, genocide, and the rise and fall of empires, yet are still here today. This is the story of the Jewish people, one of the most extraordinary, painful, and resilient sagas in all of human history. If you think you know this story from school or movies, think again, because the truth is far more dramatic, far more complex, and far more inspiring than you've ever been told. Before we dive deep, make sure to hit like and subscribe, because this is going to be the most detailed journey through Jewish history you've ever seen, and you don't want to miss a single second of it. Our story begins in the ancient land of Canaan, somewhere between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea, where small tribal communities roamed the hills and valleys. Among them rose a figure whose name would echo across millennia: Abraham. Whether seen as a historical patriarch or a mythic ancestor, Abraham's story is where the Jewish narrative begins. A man who, according to tradition, heard a divine voice telling him to leave his homeland and journey to a promised land. This idea that a single God had chosen Abraham and his descendants for a special covenant would become the foundation of the Jewish faith and identity. But from the very beginning, the Jewish story is one of struggle. Abraham's descendants, Isaac and Jacob, and the 12 tribes of Israel faced famine, war, and displacement. Eventually, they migrated to Egypt, where they found survival but also fell into bondage. And here comes one of the most defining moments in Jewish memory: the Exodus. Under Moses, the Israelites were said to have been freed from slavery, crossing the Red Sea and wandering the desert for 40 years. Whether you see it as history or as sacred narrative, the story of liberation became the beating heart of Jewish identity, a reminder that freedom must always be fought for, no matter the cost. After reaching the Promised Land, the Israelites established a kingdom under Saul, then David, and finally Solomon, who built the Great Temple in Jerusalem, a place that would become the holiest site in Judaism. This was a golden age, a brief but powerful moment of unity and strength. But as history so often teaches us, golden ages don't last forever. The kingdom fractured into two: Israel in the north and Judah in the south. Soon came the Assyrians, who conquered the northern kingdom, scattering the so-called 10 lost tribes, a mystery that still fascinates historians today. Then came the Babylonians, who destroyed the first temple and carried the Jewish elite into exile in Babylon. It was a catastrophe, but also a turning point. In exile, Judaism transformed. Without a temple, the people began to focus on texts, prayers, and laws. They wrote down their oral traditions, forming what we now know as much of the Hebrew Bible. In other words, exile gave birth to the Judaism that would survive for centuries. When the Persians conquered Babylon, they allowed the Jews to return and rebuild the temple. But soon, new empires swept in: the Greeks under Alexander the Great, and later the Romans. Each left their mark, bringing Hellenistic culture, trade, and philosophy, but also tension. The Maccabean revolt against the Seleucid Greeks gave rise to Hanukkah, celebrating Jewish resistance and survival. Yet under Roman rule, things would turn tragic again in the year 70 CE. The Romans destroyed the Second Temple after a Jewish revolt. This was more than just a building, it was the very heart of Jewish worship. With the temple gone, Judaism once again had to reinvent itself. Rabbis and scholars created a portable religion, one that could be practiced anywhere, through Torah, prayer, and community. But the Romans scattered the Jews across their empire, beginning the long period known as the diaspora. For centuries, Jewish communities lived as minorities across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. They thrived in some places, becoming traders, scholars, and financiers, but also faced brutal persecution. In medieval Europe, Jews were blamed for plagues, accused of heresy, and expelled from country after country. England in 1290, Spain in 1492. The Spanish Inquisition forced thousands to convert or flee, while others were tortured and killed. Yet despite centuries of hatred, Jewish intellectual life flourished. Jewish philosophers like Maimonides and poets like Yehuda Halevi shaped culture. Jewish merchants connected the Islamic world with Christian Europe. The Talmud was studied and debated across generations, keeping the tradition alive. Then came the modern era, and with it new challenges and new opportunities. The Enlightenment opened doors for Jews in Europe. Some became leading scientists, writers, and politicians. But emancipation also sparked backlash. Anti-Semitism adapted to modern times, no longer just religious but racial. Pogroms in Russia and Eastern Europe forced millions of Jews to flee, many coming to the United States, where they built new lives. And then the darkest chapter of all. In the 20th century, hatred of the Jews reached a horrifying climax with the Holocaust. Under Adolf Hitler, Nazi Germany murdered 6 million Jews in an industrial-scale genocide, attempting to wipe them off the face of the earth. It was a crime so vast that it reshaped global consciousness forever. But even in the ashes of that nightmare, Jewish history did not end. In 1948, after nearly 2,000 years of exile, the modern state of Israel was founded. For Jews around the world, it was a dream fulfilled, a homeland where they could finally govern themselves. For others, it marked the beginning of new conflicts, as Palestinians were displaced and wars with neighboring Arab countries erupted. The story of Israel, its triumphs, its struggles, its controversies continues to this day, shaping global politics and identity. And yet, perhaps the most incredible part of Jewish history is this. Through all the trials from Pharaoh to Babylon, from Rome to Auschwitz, the Jewish people are still here. Today, there are over 15 million Jews worldwide, contributing to science, art, literature, technology, and politics. Their story is not over. It never was. This is the history of the Jews, a story of faith and survival, tragedy and triumph. It's the story of humanity itself, a reminder that no matter how dark the world becomes, identity, memory, and hope can never be completely destroyed.